We're on the second line of Tzadi Vav Amud Beis, and we're talking about this concept of Marika Ushtifa. Marika Ushtifa is something that the Torah says needs to be done. It's a kind of cleansing, although we haven't really gotten a clear definition. It's a cleansing with water of a kodshim vessel that cooked kodshim meat for consumption by the Kohanim. And the Torah says that after that vessel is used to cook the meat for eating, you have to do Marika Ushtifa, which the Gemara is going to give us a fuller definition of what kind of cleansing it is. But ostensibly, it's a type of koshering of the kli so that it can be usable for the future. Now, Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda Havaragil, this is the second line of Tzadi Vav Amud Beis. Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda Havaragil Kamei Rami Bar Chama Shavkei Va'azil Rav Sheshes. Rav Yitzchak was a Talmud of Rami Bar Chama, and he decided to leave his yeshiva and went to learn instead by Rav Sheshes. Now, Yom Echad Pagabe, Amar Le, Al Kafta Nakton Rechi, Asi La Liad, Mishum Da Azlach Lach Lekami de Rav Sheshes, Havis Lach Ki Rav Sheshes? Question mark. So he gave him Rabbi Bar Chama, obviously, his feelings were hurt. You know, when you get someone who comes to your shir for such a long time and then all of a sudden they stop showing up, you start to take it personally. Like, what happened? Where did you go? You left me, right? So Rami Bar Chama feels the same way. You went to learn by Rav Sheshes instead. What happened? And the way he expresses it is, maybe you think that by going to Rav Sheshes you would become more chashuv like Rav Sheshes, because Rav Sheshes was considered to be the Gadol Hador. So you're leaving a small knacker like me and going to a bigger knacker. And the metaphor that he used was that, you know, people think that when they touch the hand of the tax collector and they get some of his perfume on them, then they gain the status of the tax collector himself. So is that what you think? You think that by going to Rav Sheshes you're going to become like Rav Sheshes? So Amar Le, lav mishum hachi mar, lav mishum hachi. Mar ki bo'ina milsa pashali misvara. Ki mashkachna masnisa parchala. Rav Sheshes ki bo'ina milsa minei pashali mi masnisa. Dechinami mashkachna masniso parcha masnisu masnisahi. He says, Rebbe, no, you don't understand why I left. He says, you know, you, Rami Bar Chama, are a brilliant scholar, and so when I ask you a question, you answer based not on your knowledge of brises and mishnayos, but rather on logic. So your logic works until, if someone were to find a brisa or a mishnah that would contradict your logic, then your logic would be undone. However, when I ask Rav Sheshes Shaila, he has such a mastery over the text that he's able to respond based on an actual Mishnaic text. And therefore, if another text is found to contradict his answer, at least he can say that it's a machlokus between one Mishnaic text and another. So his responses to my questions are therefore more authoritative, and that's the reason why I switched and went from you to him. So Amar Le, Ba'imi noi milsa de ifshitlach kimas nisa. So Rav Rami Bar Chama said to Rav Yitzchak, he wanted to persist, and he said, listen, you can ask me anything you want, and I'll be able to answer based on a Mishnaic text also. You know, let me prove you wrong. So ba'aminei bishul b'mixas kli ton mariko shtifa o ein ton. So we know that according to the Torah, that if you cook in a vessel, you have to do mariko shtifa inside the temple before using the vessel again. And what happens, asked Rabbi Yitzchak, if you only cook in a portion of the vessel? Right? Only a portion of the vessel was placed over the fire to cook a portion of food, but it only was cooked in one portion and the rest of the vessel was not placed over the fire. Would it be necessary to do marika and shtifa on the entire pot or not? So Amar Le, Eino To'on, Midi Dahava Ahazah. So Rami Bar Chama said to him, yes, he said, no, it would not require marika and shtifa. All you would need to do is to rinse only that portion of the pot. You would not have to rinse the entire pot. And how do I know this? Because the Mishnah that talks about marika and shtifa also talks about when blood sprinkles on a beged. When blood sprinkles on a beged, what portion of the beged do you have to launder? Only that portion of the beged. You don't have to launder the entire beged, and so presumably a kli would just be the same. So Rav Yitzchak said to him, V'halo tana hachi. But Rebbe, you said you were going to answer me based on a Mishnaic text. There is no Mishnaic text that says that. If anything, it's absent from the text. So Amar lei mistavra kebeged. Ma beged eino ton kibus elamakom hadam. Af kli eino ton mariko shtifa ela b'makom bishul. So Rami Bar Chama said, you're right, it's a svara. I'm extrapolating from the Mishnah that just like when blood sprinkles on a garment, you only have to wash that portion of the garment. Logic dictates that the same thing should apply to a kli. When you only cook in a portion of the kli, only that portion requires marikan shtifa, and not the entire kli. So Amar lei mi dami, dam lo mifapeya, bishul mifapeya. So Rebbe, there's no comparison. When blood sprinkles on a garment, the blood does not diffuse into the rest of the garment. It stays isolated in that part of the garment. But when you cook and flavor absorbs into a pot through heat, the flavor diffuses into the walls of the pot, into areas even where it wasn't cooking. That's a chemical issue, he says. V'o tanya chomer bahaza mimeriko shtiva v'chomer b'meriko shtiva mi bahaza. And furthermore, now I have a Mishnaic text, the Braisa, which actually contradicts what you said. In other words, Rav Yitzchak was really only proving his point to Rami Bar Chama, that Rami Bar Chama used to argue from Svara, but didn't have a complete mastery as much as his Rebbe Rav Sheshis did over the Mishnaic texts. He says, look at the Braisa. The Braisa says that there's a stringency when it comes to laundering a stain on a garment over the requirement of marikan shtifa vessels, and there's a stringency of marikan shtifa vessels that does not exist when it comes to laundering stains on garments. Chomer bahaza, shahaza yeshna bechatos hachitzonos uvechatos hapnimios, v'yeshna lifnei zrika ma she'en kein bariko shtifa. He says, what's the stringency with blood stains on a garment? He says, it doesn't matter what kind of blood stain from what kind of carbon. He says, it could be any kind of carbon, whether there's edible meat from that carbon or not. And furthermore, even with edible carbonos, where a portion of the carbon is supposed to be eaten, even though the zrika hasn't been done such that the meat is not yet edible, but if any blood from that carbon is sprinkled on a garment, the Torah requires you to launder it in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, that doesn't apply to the requirement of marikan shtifa, because marikan shtifa, by definition, is only when you're cooking edible meat from the carbon does the Torah require you to wash it. As we'll see, the Torah directly correlates the eating of the Kohanim to the requirement of marikan shtifa. So therefore you see that there's a larger scope of things for which you have to launder a garment than for which you have to do marikan shtifa. Chomer b'mariko shtifa shahamariko shtifa noheges bein b'kodshe kodshim, bein b'kodshim kalim. But let's look at it on the other direction. There's a stringency of marikan shtifa that applies to washing all vessels that cooked kodshim meat, whether it's higher level kodshim or whether it's lower level kodshim. Whereas by haza'ah, the Torah only requires the kibus in the temple only when it comes to a korban chatas, which implies that it's only for higher level kodshim, not for lower level kodshim. Now, so that's a stringency that exists by marikan shtifa, that even for kodshim kalim you have to do marikan shtifa, whereas kibus of a beged you don't have to do unless it's got a stain from a chatas. Now, bishul b'miktzas hakli ton mariko shtifa kol hakli ma she'en kein bahaza. And finally, the Brisa says, here's another stringency by mariko shtifa, that if you cook in even only a portion of the vessel, you have to do marikan shtifa to the entire vessel, whereas by laundering a garment, you only have to launder the part that contracted the stain and not the rest of the garment. So, just proven to you that your argument does not hold true because it's contradicted by the Brisa. So Amar lei itanya tanya. So Rami Bar Chama relented and he said, listen, I can't argue with the Brisa. If it's a Brisa, then I have to submit. V'taimamai. So what taka is the reason? So we already had a svara that Rabbi Yitzchak had given, is that when it comes to heat causes flavor to diffuse into the walls of the pots. But we'll even say that there's a pasuk, Amar Krav, v'im bichli nechoshes pushala, va'afilu b'miktzas kli, because the Torah says that if within a copper vessel it was cooked, which implies even a subset of the copper vessel was used for cooking, then umorak v'shutaf, the entire vessel has to be totally rinsed inside and outside with water. Okay, now, I want to just emphasize again, we have not carefully defined what marikan shtifa is. All we know is it's a type of cleansing of the vessel with water, but we don't know what it accomplishes, and we don't know really what it's doing. Ostensibly, it's a type of koshering of the vessel to make it usable for future use, but we don't know what it does. Next, echad kadshe kadshim v'chulei. The Mishnah had said that the law of Merik and Shtif applies to both higher level kadshim and lower level kadshim. Tanu Rabbanan, chatas, ainli ela chatas kol ha-kadshim inayin. So the Brisa says that the context of Merik and Shtifa is written by a korban chatas, which is kadshe kadshim, higher level kadshim. How do you know that it applies to all kadshim? Talmud lomar kodesh kodashim hi. So the Torah extraneously says it is holy of holies. So those extra words teach me that you extend it beyond just the chatas and extend it to all kadshim. Now, yachal shani marbis truma, you might think that even if I cook truma in a kli, there's a necessity to have marika and shtifa. So Talmud lomar osa prat latruma diver Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says no. That's why there's also the word osa in the context of those psukim, which tells me kol zachar ba kohanim yochal osa, that the things that kohanim eat, only for certain things is there a requirement for marika and shtifa. So that's to the exclusion of something else that only kohanim eat, which is truma. So truma is excluded from the law of marika and shtifa. That's according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Omer kadshe kadshim tunin marika shtifa kadshim kalam einan tunin marika shtifa dichsiv kodesh kodashim kadshe kadshim in kadshim kalam lo. So Rabbi Shimon looks at the words, those extraneous words kodesh kodashim, and he says no, it's only referring to holy of holies, which is higher level kadshim. The Torah only requires marika and shtifa by kadshe kadshim and not by kadshim kalam. My time at the Rebbe Yehuda, mid'itztrich osa l'ma'utei truma michlal dekadshim kalim tunin marika shtifa. So why does Rebbe Yehuda disagree? He says, granted that the pasuk says kodesh kodashim, however, the word osa, which excludes truma, indicates that anything that is holier than truma does require marika and shtifa. So that's why I look at the words kodesh kodashim to refer to all kadshim, not just kadshe kadshim. The Reb Shimon Amar Lacha osa kida amrinan. Utruma lobaya kida amrinan, period. And Reb Shimon says the word osa is not coming to exclude truma from the requirement of marika shtifa. You don't need a pasuk for that. You know what osa is coming to exclude? Something that I taught before. What did Reb Shimon teach before? He taught in the previous Mishnah that when you have kadshim that becomes puzzle and you cook it in a vessel, that vessel does not require marika ushtifa. And that's what he learns from the word osa. So therefore, since he uses the word osa not for truma, the word kodesh kodashim only refers to higher level kadshim and not to kadshim kalim. So frek the Gemara utruma, but basically both Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda seem to both agree that if you cook truma in a pot, you don't have to do marika ushtifa. So the question is like this: utruma lo baya shtifa marika? Oh, really? Is that the case? The Hatanya kedera shabishal ba basar lo yavashal ba chalav v'im bishal b'nosein tam. Look at the following brisa. Now this brisa is talking about the laws of kashrus. You'll find this in Maseches Chulin, having to do with kashering vessels. If I have a fleishich pot, I'm not allowed to cook meat in it. I can't tell you how many times I get these kinds of questions, right? But if you did cook meat in that pot, milk in the pot, so what's the halacha? You have to evaluate, is there enough absorbed flavor in the walls of the pot to emit flavor? And if there is, so then the contents of the pot are a mixture of basar v'chalav, because we hold tam ke'ikr, we hold that the flavor is like the main thing, is the thing itself, and therefore it is prohibited. Truma lo yavashel bachulin v'im bishal b'nosein tam. And furthermore, if you have a pot that's trumadik, meaning that if I'm a kohen, and I have a pot that I use to cook my truma tithes, I can't cook chulin in it, and if I do, then the chulin has to obtain the same chumras of truma, such that it can only be eaten by the kohen, and it has certain limitations. It can only be eaten in a state of tahara and not in a state of tumah, right? So what do you see from here? You see that truma flavor that absorbs into the walls of a vessel requires kashering in order to use it for something else. So why then does truma not require marika and shtifa? Because the Gemara is working under the assumption that marika and shtifa is a form of kashering of the vessel to make it usable for other things afterwards. So Amar Abaya, lo tzricha ela ledo amar mar, bishal b'mixas kli ton marika shtifa kol hakli. Ha-truma lo tzarech ela makom bishal. So Abaya says, let me apply what we just learned in the previous Gemara. Really, even for truma, you need to have marika and shtifa. But the difference between kachim and truma is that for kachim, if you use only a small portion of the vessel to cook, you still need to do marika and shtifa for the entire vessel. You got to kasher the entire vessel. But with truma, if I cook truma in a small portion of the pot, I only have to do kashering on that small portion of the pot, and I don't have to kasher the rest of the pot. Rava Amar, lo tzricha ela ledo amar mar b'mayim v'lo b'yayin b'mayim v'lo b'mazuk ha afilu b'yayin v'afilu b'mazuk. Rava said, I'll give you a different answer. When it comes to kashering truma containers and other vessels, as long as you apply a heated liquid that will draw out the absorbed flavor in the pot, so you can use whatever liquid will do the job. It can be water, it can be wine, it can be diluted wine, you can use any liquid. But marika and shtifa for kachim vessels require specifically water. And that's the difference between the marika shtifa for kachim and the marika shtifa for truma vessels. Rabba bar Ula Amar, lo tzricha ela ledo amar mar, marika shtifa bitzonein ha afilu bechamin. And Rabba bar Ula says, and it seems to be the more definitive answer, but I'm not really sure, but he says that no, there's a fundamental difference. You're confusing marika and shtifa with hag'ala. Hag'ala is the process like we do on before Pesach when COR comes and they have this big pot of boiling water. They stick a utensil in boiling water in order to remove any of the blios, in order to remove any of the absorbed flavor in the walls of the pot. But that's not what marika and shtifa is. Marika and shtifa is after you've done hag'ala to remove the forbidden flavor, you have to, the Torah requires kachim vessels to be rinsed in cold water. That's the additional step that has to be done with kachim vessels that does not have to be done with any other vessels. So the Gemara says, Hanicha lamando amar marika shtifa bitzonin, ela lamando amar marika bechamin shtifa bitzonin ma'ika lameimar. So the Gemara says, well, that's all very good and well, as we're going to see in the next Mishnah, if you learn that marika and shtifa have to be with cold water. Because we're going to see that that's a machlokus, but there's an opinion that says that marika is with hot water and shtifa is with cold water. So then how can you tell me that truma vessels don't require marika and shtifa if marika is itself hagala? You're telling me that every vessel requires hagala if it has a forbidden substance. So how can you tell me that if marika is hagala, how can you tell me that truma vessels don't require marika? So the Gemara answers shtifa yaserta. The answer is you're right, but kachim vessels require additional rinsing. In other words, when it comes to other vessels, they only require hagala, but with kachim vessels, there's a requirement for like additional rinsing with cold water. And that's still going to end up being the difference. Now, I just want to make a point of saying there's a very interesting tosus over here. You may have had a rabbi tell you in some point in your religious career that you call him up and you say, I trafed up a spoon, what am I supposed to do? So he'll tell you, drop the spoon in a pot of boiling water, and then afterwards drain out the hot water and rinse the spoon in cold water. Did a rabbi ever tell you to do that? Put it in cold water afterwards. So the reason for that is based on a minhag. Tosfos says it's only a minhag, because from this Gemara you see that shtifa, rinsing in cold water, is only required for kachim vessels. It's not required for chulin vessels. But our minhag is to do it even for non-kachim vessels as well. Okay, let's go on to the next Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Rabbi Tarfon Omer, Bishel mitchilas haregel, Yevashel bo kol haregel, v'chachamim omrim ad zman achila. Rabbi Tarfon has this very strange shita. He says, normally, what's the reason for doing mariko shtifa? Ostensibly, it's to kasher the vessel, right? After, whether it's part of Hagala, whether it's a process after Hagala. Rabbi Tarfon says, if you're using a vessel over the course of the 7 days of the Chag, you don't have to do mariko shtifa. You don't have to kasher that vessel until after the Chag is over. Which means, he's saying something very bizarre, which doesn't really make any sense. When does a korban become nosar? Well, for a chatas, the following day, for shlamim after 2 days. He's saying, don't worry about it. Anything that's absorbed in, you can just wait until after Pesach or after Sukkot is over, and then you can go ahead and kasher the vessel. Doesn't make any sense. What about the... Yeah, you can continue using it over the course of the Chag. What about the absorbed flavor that's already become nosar? It's past its expiration date. Why am I allowed to use it? We don't know. We're going to find out in the Gemara. The Chachamim omrim ad zman achila. The Chachamim say and some have the girsa kol zman achila, that it's only during the time of eating, which we're not really sure what that means. The Gemara will have to define what that means. Marika ushtifa, marika kemarika sakos, ushtifa kishtifa sakos. That, what's the difference between marika and shtifa? Marika is like the rinsing of a cup, and shtifa is like the washing of a cup. Does that help you understand what the difference between marika and shtifa is? Rashi says that marika is the inside of a cup, and shtifa is the outside. So that's, according to the Mishnah, the difference between marika and shtifa. And marika ushtifa bitzoni. And then, and there again, there's a machlokus in the girsa of the Mishnah. Some say that the girsa is like it is in front of us, that both marika and shtifa are with cold water. And some say that the girsa is marika bechamin ushtifa bitzoni, that they add the word bechamin. So it's clearly, we're going to see it's a machlokus whether marika is with hot water or with cold water. And finally, hashbud v'ha'askala magi'ilan bechamin, that if you have a kudshim spit or grate that is used to roast kudshim meat, and you need to kasher it, you can kasher it using the process of hagala, of putting it in hot water. Now, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah challenges this and says, how can you kasher something that was used with dry heat using hagala? Hagala is only a process that works when you use something with wet heat. But when you use something with dry heat, you need something called libun, which is to place it in a fire. So how does it work? We're not going to answer that question today, but just realize that the Gemara in Avodah Zarah undertakes that issue. The Gemara now says, "My time of the Rabbi Tarfon." What's Rabbi Tarfon's reason for saying that you can continue using the vessel for the entire Chag without kashering it? The Omar Kra ufanisa v'boker v'halachtola ohalecha hakasav asan l'kulan boker echad. He says, I base it on a pasuk. The Torah says that the day after Yontif, the Torah calls the day after Yontif the following morning. And it says the following morning you can go home. So what does it mean the following morning? The following morning treats Yom Tov like it's one day. It says the day after Yom Tov is over. And it treats Yom Tov like it's a one-day period, even when Yom Tov is a 7-day period. So what do you see from that language? It said that pasuk is treating Yom Tov like one long day. So therefore, there are no laws that apply to expiration dates over the course of Yom Tov. That's why you're allowed to continue using the vessel. So maskef l'ravach debuye bar ami b'chi ein pigel beregel ve'ein nosar beregel. So according to what you're saying, there's no expiration dates over the course of Yom Tov. So I can have a machshava of pigel. I'm going to shech this chatas today in order to eat the meat tomorrow. As long as it's during Chol HaMoed, it's okay. And you're going to tell me that the laws of nosar don't apply, that if I have a shlamim and I can leave it over for 3 days and still eat it? Is that what you're telling me? Maybe you'll tell me that that's taka what Rabbi Tarfon holds. V'hatanya Rabbi Nasan Omer lo Omer Rabbi Tarfon alazu bilvad. But Rabbi Tarfon was quoted explicitly in a brisa as saying that the only leniency that he has is to not require marika and shtifa until after Yontif. But all other laws of expiration dates, such as pigul and nosar, still apply over the course of the 7-day Yontif. So it can't be based on a pasuk, but it must be based on something else. Ela kid Rav Nachman Amar Rabba Bar Avuha, the Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rabba Bar Avuha, Kol Yom V'Yom Nase Gi'ul L'Chavero. And it's a fascinating concept, but it's based on what is happening chemically. When you use a pot, and I cook, if I use it today, and then the second day I cook with it, so then in theory, what's happening is that all the flavor that absorbed into it yesterday is being pulled out through my cooking process today. Because we have a principle in halacha, kibola'o, kach, polto. That just like something is absorbed through heat, through liquid heat, so too it is emitted through liquid heat. So if the presumption is, Rabbi Tarfon says, that every single day I'm going to be using this pot to cook kudshim meat, because I'm bringing karbanos daily over the course of my stay in Yerushalayim, over the course of Chol HaMoed. So therefore, let's say first day of Yontif is Sunday, and I've cooked my kudshim meat. Monday comes, I'm going to cook another new batch of kudshim meat. So what all flavor that was absorbed in from Sunday will be pulled out of the pot on Monday, and Monday's flavor will be absorbed into the pot. Tuesday, the same process will happen ad infinitum. And so therefore, you don't have to worry about lingering flavor past one day since you're using the pot on a daily basis.
Isn't the stuff from the day before going back into the food you're cooking?
So that's an excellent question. You're using logic, but the answer is that that's what we call not bar not. And that's something that has to be discussed in chulin. In other words, it's such a diluted flavor because it's gone in and come out, then by the time it goes back in, it's no longer considered real according to halacha. Okay?
Well, why is this to do with Yontef and couldn't you say that anytime?
You could, but Rabbi Tarfon says on a practical basis, the only time you're using a kli on a daily basis to cook kudshim is over Yontif. That's typically what happens. V'chachamim omrim ad zman achila v'chulei. The chachamim say, we disagree, you only have until the time of eating. Now what do those words mean? Mai ka'amar, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avuha, mamtin la ad zman achila, or some say mamtin la kol zman achila, v'hader avid la marika ushtifa. So, and it seems the way that Rashi and Tosfos learn is as follows. We don't want you to kasher a kli while the absorbed flavor is still during its period of pre-nosar, where it's still edible. And the reason is because you're not, just like you're not allowed to destroy kudshim prematurely, by kashering a vessel and removing the flavor from the walls of the vessel, you're in effect destroying kudshim prematurely. So therefore, wait until the flavor, if it were actual meat, would no longer be edible, it's nosar, and then since you can no longer eat it, that's when you should kasher the vessel. Minohani mili, so on what basis do you say this? Rabbi Yochanan misham Abi Yossi ben Abba, ksiv u'morak v'shutaf, u'chasiv kol zachar b'kohanim yochal, ha'ketzad mamtin la adzman achila v'adar avid la mariku shtifa. He says, because the pasuk indicates that. The pasuk seems to correlate the eating of the kohanim to the mariku shtifa. That is, once the kohanim have finished eating, then you do mariku shtifa. So that implies that as long as the meat is still edible, you should delay, you should forego doing the mariku shtifa. Only after they've eaten it, or it's edible, can you do mariku shtifa. Okay, now marika kimrika sakos, shtifa kishtifa sakos. And the next thing the Mishnah had said was that marika is like the rinsing of the inside of the vessel, and shtifa is rinsing the outside of the vessel. Tana Rabbanan mariko shtifa bitzonin divrei Rebbe v'chachamim omrim marika b'chamen u'shtifa bitzonin. So this is the machlokus that we had referenced before. The Rebbe holds that both marika and shtifa are with cold water, and the chachamim say that marika is with hot water, and shtifa is with cold water. So you first do the hagala in hot water, and then you rinse it off with cold water. So my time of Rabbanan mida dahava gibuli ovdei kochavim. Now, why did the Chachamim insist that marika is with hot water? Because we know that the Torah says in Parshas Matos that when they got vessels from the Midianites and they had to kasher them, Moshe told them to put them into hot water. So similarly, anytime you want to kasher something from an absorbed forbidden substance, you have to use heat. And that's how I know that it has to have hot water. So, v'Rebbe Omer Lecha, Hagala lo kamina ki kamina lo mariko shtifa de basar hagala. And Rebbe says, I totally agree that you have to do hagala, which is immersing in hot water. But that's not what mariko shtifa means. Mariko shtifa is after hagala, you do a process of rinsing the inside and rinsing the outside of the vessel. And that's in cold water. V'Rabbanan, im kein lichtov kra o morak morak o shutaf shutaf. My morak v'shutaf shmamino mariko b'chamen u'shtifa b'tzoni. And the Chachamim's response to that is, well, why then does the Torah use two verbs? If marika and shtifa both mean rinsing in cold water, why then does the Torah use two separate verbs for essentially the same action? V'Rebbe iksiva morak morak havamina trei zimni morak o trei zimni shutaf. Lekach ksiva morak v'shutaf lamar lecha marika k'marika sakos, shtifa ki shtifa sakos. And Rebbe says, no, you're right that there are two different actions. But the two different actions are not with different temperatures of water, but marika is the inside of the kos and shtifa is the outside of the kos. If the Torah would have only used one verb, I might think that you only have to rinse the inside of the kos twice or wash the outside of the kos twice. So therefore the Torah uses two different verbs, one for the inside and one for the outside, but both of them are with cold water. Next, Mishnah. Bishal bo kadshim v'chulan o kadshe kadshim v'kadshim kalim. Im yeshben benos sein tam, harei hakalim ne'achalim kechamurin shebahen, ve'enon tu'unim nariko shtifa, ve'en poslin b'maga. So the Mishnah says something again which is going to need to be retranslated by the Gemara because at face value it makes no sense. If a person takes kadshim and chulin and cooks them in the same pot together. Or if a person takes kadshe kachim and kachim kalim and cooks them in the same pot together, so then the halacha is that as long as flavor is detectable by the more chamor substance, by the more stringent substance, whether that's kachim or kadshe kachim, in the less chamor substance, whether that's chulin or kachim kalim, then the halacha is that the less chamor substance has to be eaten with the restrictions of the more chamor substance. Because of the principle of tam ke'ikr, that if I can detect the flavor of the more chamor substance in the less chamor substance, then essentially I'm eating with it the more chamor substance, and therefore I have to assign this item that I'm eating with the stringencies of the more chamor substance. Now, so the next thing, ve'enan te'unin meriko shtifa, but the vessel does not require meriko shtifa. We don't understand why that should be, because if I'm dealing with kachim, of course you should have to wash the kli. Ve'enan poslim b'maga, and furthermore, if we're not dealing with cooking, but we're dealing with two substances touching each other that are hot, then one substance does not disqualify the other substance. Now that also seems counterintuitive. We're not sure we understand. Next, rakik shenaga berakik v'chaticha b'chaticha lo kol harikikin v'lo kol hachaticha sasurin eno asur ela b'makom shebala. And finally, the Mishnah says, if you have two dry substances, like two hot griddle cakes that are kachim, one touches the other. So one is pasul and one is kosher, or one is kachim and one is chulin. If they touch each other, or if you have two pieces of meat, one touches the other piece of meat through, and they're both hot. So because there's no liquid involved in the transfer, we only look at what fatty substances could potentially have been transferred from one piece of meat to the other piece of meat. And therefore, we don't say that the entire piece of meat that touched the forbidden substance is going to be usur, but rather only the portion that actually touched it, the tip that touched that forbidden substance, becomes usur, and you have to cut it off. Okay, we're going to explain that in just a moment. So the Gemara, we'll see. It's actually kedei netila, according to Shulchan Aruch. So the Gemara now says, Mai ka'amar. So we don't understand the Gemara, because we understand the part which said that if they're cooked together, you have to treat, and there's tam of the more chamer substance and the less chamer substance, you have to treat the less chamer substance like the more chamer substance. But then afterwards, it went off the rails, the language. So what is going on? So hachi kamer im yesh bahen benosein tam harei akalan ne'echalam kechamurin u'te'unin meriko shtifu poslin b'maga. So the answer is as follows. What the Mishnah really is supposed to be read is as follows. If there is flavor that is detectable in the less chamer substance from the more chamer substance, so then you have to treat the less chamer substance with the same stringencies as the more chamer substance, and you need to therefore wash out the vessel, do marikan shtifa, kasher the vessel afterwards, and furthermore, if the two pieces touch each other without heat, one pasels the other. If one is pasul and one is kasher, one will pasel the other, just like the latter part of the Mishnah said. You have to take off a little piece of the permitted substance that came in physical contact with the forbidden substance. Ein bohem benosein tam, ein hakala ne'echalam kechamurim, ve'ein te'unin meriko shtifa, ve'ein poslin b'maga. If, however, there is no flavor that is emitted, because when you're cooking them together, the more chamer substance is in such small quantity that it is completely bottle, you cannot detect its flavor in the much larger, lighter substance, so then the halacha is you don't have to treat the lighter substance with the chumras of the more chamer substance, but you don't have to do mariko and shtifa, and in a situation where there's no detectable flavor, that when it came in contact with the permitted substance, that permitted substance is not stigmatized by having come in physical contact with the forbidden substance. So the Gemara now says, okay, let's analyze this. Nihita kache kachim lobo, kachim kalam niboy. I don't understand why you don't need mariko shtifa. In the case of where you cook kache kachim together with kachim kalim, how can you say that you don't need mariko shtifa just because you cannot detect the flavor of the kache kachim? You should still have to do mariko shtifa by virtue of the fact that there's kachim kalim, because mariko shtifa has to be done for kachim kalim as well. So Amar Abaye mai ein te'unin de ka'amar kache kachim aval kachim kalin te'unin. So Abaye says that's actually what the Mishnah means. Abaye says what it means is you don't have to do marika ushtifa because of the kadshe kachim, but you still have to do marika ushtifa because of the kachim kalim that you cooked in there. And that's what the Mishnah means. Rava Amar Hamani Reb Shimon Hi Da Amar Kachim Kalam Ein Ta'unin Mariko Shtifa. And Rava says, no, I have a different answer that's much more Svaradic. And this Mishnah goes according to Reb Shimon, who says that you don't need to do Mariko Shtifa for Kachim Kalim. That was the previous Mishnah's Machlokes. That Reb Shimon says you don't do Mariko Shtifa for Kachim Kalim. And therefore, when you have a mixture of Kadshe Kachim and Kachim Kalim, but the Kadshe Kachim is in such small quantity that it does not emit flavor to the kachim kalim, it's such a small amount. So then, according to Reb Shimon, you don't have to do mariko shtif at all. You don't have to kasher the vessel at all. So bishlam l'rava hainu dekatani o kadshe kachim uvekachim kalim ela le'abaya tarti lamali. So then the Gemara says, okay, now I understand. If you learn like Rava, then there's a chiddush in telling me the two cases. The chiddush in telling me the two cases is if I have kachim cooking with chulin, and the kachim is in such small quantity that it doesn't give flavor to the chulin, so everything is fine. No worries. And the second case is, if you have kadshe kachim cooking with kachim kalim, you also are not going to have any problem. You're not going to need to do mariko shtifa because we paskin like Reb Shimon. So what's the chiddush of case number 2? We paskin like Reb Shimon. But according to Abaye, who says that we don't paskin like Reb Shimon, and really the Mishnah is requiring mariko shtifa, so why did you need to introduce two cases when one case would have sufficed? They're both teaching you essentially the same thing, that you go after nesinas tam, you go according to whether there's flavor of the mochamer substance or not. So why do you need both cases? Just give me either the case of kachim cooking with chulin, or the second case of kachim kalim cooking with kadshe kachim. Why do you need both? So the Gemara says tzrichi. I'll tell you why. Di'itana kachim v'chulin hava amina chulin hu demevatli kachim delav minayu aval kadshe kachim v'kachim kalim emalo. I'll tell you why. If I would have only had the case of kachim and chulin, I might have said that the reason why the chulin is perfectly okay when the flavor of the kachim is not detectable is because it's min b'she'eno mino. They're two totally different things, and therefore chulin has the ability to be mevatel, to make bottle the kachim whose flavor is not detectable, because it's much easier to accomplish bittul, nullification, when you have two totally separate items. But if I have two items that are both kachim, one's kadshe kachim and one's kachim kalim, perhaps I would have argued that one cannot make the other bottle, because they're two of the same kind, they're both kachim. And therefore you need the second case to tell me that even kachim kalim can make bottle kadshe kachim. V'itana kadshe kachim v'kachim kalim hava amina kachim hu da'alimi levetule kachim of al-chulin emalo tzricha. And if I only had the latter case of kadshe kachim cooking together with kachim kalim, where the kachim kalim are mevatel, the kadshe kachim, maybe I would have argued that bittul is only accomplished in that case because kachim kalim, at least they're kachim and have the ability, the strength, because of their holiness, to make kadshe kachim bottle. But perhaps chulin doesn't have that spiritual strength to be mevatel kachim. And therefore you need the first case as well to tell you that in both cases you can accomplish bittul. And finally, let's go to just a few more lines. Rakik shehigia berakik. So if you have two loaves of bread that touch each other, or wafers that touch each other that have just been baked, or if you have two hot pieces of meat that touch each other, so the principle that we're learning about here is that there is a transfer of either flavor or fat that is transferred from one substance to the other, but it doesn't diffuse and permeate the entire permitted substance, that the entire permitted substance is pasul, but rather you only have to snip off the tip, only cut off the tip that actually came in physical contact with the forbidden substance. Now, Tanu Rabbanan, Kol Asher Yiga, Yachol Afilu Shelo Bala, Tamulomar Bivisara. So the Torah says anything that touches kachim becomes holy as well. So you might think that that's true even if it didn't absorb any flavor, even if or absorb any fat. So therefore the Torah says, no, bivisara. It has to actually contract some of the meat from the kachim substance. Ad sheyivla bivisara. It has to absorb some of the meat. Yachol naga b'miktzas chaticha yekulo pasul. You might think that if only a portion of the permitted piece of meat touches the kachim piece of meat, that the entire permitted piece of meat is going to be pasul. Talmud yiga hanogeya pasul. So therefore the Torah says, no, only the part that touches shall become pasul, but not the rest of the piece of meat. So ha-ketzad chotech es makom shabola bivisara chotech es makom shabola, period. You only have to cut off that portion which absorbed the fat or the flavor of the forbidden substance. Now, bivisara velo begidin velo batzamos velo bekarnaim velo betulafim, and the word bivisara implies that when the forbidden piece has meat or fattiness in it to transfer flavor or to transfer fat. But if it's hard like a bone or a horn or a hoof that is forbidden, and it touches a permitted piece of meat, since there's no transfer at all that's taking place, it's perfectly fine. You don't have to do anything. And yikdash lihios kamoha. And finally, it shall be sanctified, the Torah says, that anything that touches the kachim shall be sanctified, it becomes just like it. Ha-ketzad im pesulihi tipasel, v'im kesherehi te'achel kechamer shabbat. That means that if that kachim piece of meat is pasul for any reason, and a perfectly fine piece of meat, whether it's kachim or chulim, irrelevant, touches it, so then that part that touched it becomes pasul itself. If the kachim piece of meat is not pasul, but rather is kachim, and it touches a non-kachim piece of meat, so then that tip that touched it has to be treated with the stringencies of kachim because it absorbs some of the fattiness or the flavor of the kachim piece of meat. And this is where we'll hold it for today with the word amai. Have a wonderful day.